All right, so I'm currently on the phone with Drew Rancid. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview series. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Drew Rancid, the only member of the industrial hardcore metal project Sock Goop. And yeah, that's all I really have to say.
All right, sure. We'll definitely get into more of that. To begin, though, why don't you take some time and tell me about how you kind of first came in contact with music, and what about it kind of reached into you and made you realize that you wanted to be a part of it.
So I always grew up around music and a bunch of different types. Like my mom would always play radio that she was listening to, and which was always just pop radio. My dad would play a lot of his rock music. I haven't quite gotten into that when I was little, and my sisters would play country for me, so I had all these different musical influences growing up. I just loved listening to music. And then things really changed for me when my sisters showed me Evanescence, specifically their song Bring Me to Life. That song just really got me into rock music. And I was only about 10 when they showed me that. And that just kick started just my real passion for music. And then, of course, I had to join band class when I hit middle school. And first I hated it, eventually grew to love it. And around that time, my own friends were starting to play instruments. And of course, I had to, one up them, of course, being naturally competitive. So I try to learn as many instruments as I can, and I've been in several different bands since. And then, yeah, that's pretty much how it got started.
Okay, so let's take a step back. Let's revisit your formative years in concert band in school. What position did you play? What instruments were you playing in concert band?
So I started out playing percussion because I really didn't want to do it, and I figured it would be the easiest.
Hmm.
So I just started playing snare drum and bass drum because I didn't have to learn any scales or how to play melodies or anything like
Sure,
that.
sure.
And I just got really into it. I just loved playing loud and fast. And since I was getting more and more into music in general, I realized, maybe I should just learn how to play the drums for myself.
Okay, so you decided you were going to learn to play drums. You also mentioned there that as part of a competitive spirit, you wanted to learn all other instruments as well. So I assume that is encompassing guitar, bass, piano, all that stuff.
Yes.
Okay. How did you feel about transitioning the skill set of learning drums into those other instruments?
Well, I've so since I started with drums, I thought of things a lot more rhythmically. So when I started up with guitar, which was my second instrument, I didn't want to play any flashy solos or anything like that. I was listening to a lot of stuff like Metallica and early Avenged Sevenfold with like the intense, like super fast palm muting and heavy riffs. And so I wanted to play very rhythmic, kind of crushing riffs instead of noodly leads and stuff. And that translated pretty easily into bass and keys because I mostly started out just playing chords, playing the rhythmic parts. So that was pretty easy.
Okay, so you mentioned that that all came about because of your friends and being around other musicians and stuff. Tell me about your kind of early exposure to forming a band and playing with other musicians.
So I remember my first experience really in a band was me and one of my best friends, still one of my best friends to this day. He was a guitarist. We had a math project where we had to create a song about some math formula or something. I don't even remember what it was, but since I was in band class, I figured I'd play the drums and he'd play guitar and sing it. And we would just have his little iPhone set up and recording it. And that was fun. Writing the song, the drum beat was super simple, but it was so much fun. And I said, let's start a band. I think that would be fun. And so then we had a friend that was a bassist that joined, and that was the first band.
Okay. And so you mentioned that you are now the solo member of your current band. How many iterations of bands do you think you've been in from that first one to kind of where you are now?
Oh God, at least a dozen. Especially in my early high school years, I'd make different groups with my friends, or the current groups I was in would constantly change on lineups. I was always switching positions between being the drummer and then being the bassist. And then eventually I became the vocalist. And as things went on, I realized since I'm able to play all these things and I just got a computer and learned how to produce, I just want to do everything myself now.
Okay, so that kind of brings us up to where you are now. So tell me about your current project. Tell me about developing all the stuff on your own, and then writing, producing, and then fundamentally releasing your own record.
So my current project really started when I got Ableton Live on my computer. Before that, I didn't really have any reliable way to record my song ideas besides being in a band. And I was having trouble with my band members at the time, either not learning the songs or not showing up to practice, or just conflicts between what sound we wanted. Like I was a vocalist at the time, and I would I'm not much of a singer, so I would scream the songs, and I was getting into heavier music, so I became more of a screamo vocalist, and they weren't really into that. But they still put up with it. And then after a while, I they just kind of became less and less involved in the process, and I would record their parts for them for songs. And then eventually I just told them, "Hey guys, I think I'm going to do this on my own." And they agreed.
Okay. Um, Fair enough. That I can definitely see how that transition would happen where, it's difficult to keep a band together as it is, and then especially when, friendship starts to fray and things like that. That is definitely difficult. So, um, about the actual context and content of what your project is, aside from the technical side of actually writing and producing it, what is it about? What do you hope out of it? Where do you want to see it in 5 to 10 years?
With my music, I just want to create something that's me. I don't want to try to sound like any other artist in specific. I just want to make something that's true to myself, that's very raw and emotional. And within the next 5 or 10 years, all I want to do really is to just keep my project going, play some shows every couple months, and just have this kind of as a low key thing. I don't really want to make this a full time project.
Okay, and since you are doing it all yourself, once you get to the point where you are doing shows and stuff, do you imagine getting another full lineup or just having everything in backing tracks? What's kind of your plan for that once you get there?
So originally, we were going to have everything as backing tracks besides my old drummer. Now, the drummer, he's always been by my side in this project. He hasn't been influencing in making any of the music, but I always send it to him to listen to make sure it's ready to release. And he's always uh, going with me to places, and just he's my right hand man. And originally, he was going to play drums, but then he kind of decided my music was a bit too much for him. It was a bit too dark. So then I realized, since also a lot of my music is electronically based, I was going to have everything backing track with besides my vocals, and I was going to have some equipment on stage that I could just hit, like some extra random drums or some like a mixer plugged into itself to make some cool noise textures, since that would work well with my music.
Okay, cool. And Are you still recording songs or are you releasing them? Do you have an album out? What's the current status that you're at?
So currently, I only have about 4 songs out, but I am constantly recording new music, and I'm going to release an album probably within the next couple months. We'll just have to see where that goes. But I'm very active musically right now.
Awesome. Very cool. I'll have you give links for all that in a second here. But before we get there, I just want you to share a couple of memories that you have about music that have either inspired you, have been impactful, or, something that keeps you motivated to keep doing.
One of the first memories was when I became the vocalist for my band when it was still really a band. Um, I remember this because it was so strange. We went from mostly playing very just chill, laid back music to me trying, just looking like a maniac as I'm screaming and stomping around the room. It was just so much fun, and I just had this surge of energy that I'd never felt before. Besides, when I first got into music, really, it was just felt so fresh. And another one I'd say is the first time I made a full song by myself and recorded and produced it and everything. That felt so good, knowing that I had control over what music I was creating. Like I had complete control, and it just felt right.
Excellent. All right. Well, you said you had a few songs out and you're going to be coming out with an album in a couple months. Where can people follow you and listen to that once it's out?
So if you search up Sock Goop, my music is on all the major streaming platforms. That you can look it up on YouTube. Um, yeah, you could follow my Facebook account, which is Drew Rancid. But yeah, just search up Sock Goop and you'll find it. I don't think there's any other artist with that weird of a name.
It is invocative of imagery. Um,
Yeah.
all right. Well, so I always like to give the person that I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out a message that they believe in. So, what's something that you think people should hear?
Just stay true to yourself and just always try to have a positive attitude about things. I know things can get rough, but the only thing that you can really control in life is how you react and your attitude. And I think the best thing that anybody can do for themselves is just always try to keep a positive attitude.